Hey guys, and welcome to Adventures in Value for Money. Please, as if you find any of this garbling content useful, please consider a like and subscribe. I appreciate it. 1989 Yamaha Moto 4 250. I never get anything for free, but I was way up north in Alberta, and some kind relatives who have a million quads offered to give this to me because I was looking for something to bring back because I never take the truck up. It's so expensive in gas. And they had this cool old Moto 4. This is one of the first quads I ever rode. This thing is fascinating. After three-wheelers got banned in the US because they were too tippy, or whether they were or not, I don't know. This was apparently the first four-wheel ATV. You can see it has no floorboards. It just has foot pegs, which are sort of like floorboards. Certainly not going to get any mud in there. Look at this. We got a little air-cooled 250. So the information on these Moto 4s is a little sporadic. It kind of predates the internet, which is interesting. But they made a 200, a 225, a 250, and a 350. Apparently, like the 200 was 196 cc, 225 was like 223, and the 250 was a whole like 229 cc. So they added a whole 6 cc to say 250. What's interesting about this thing is how light it is. It's crazy light. I had this Thundercat ATV. It was a 800, over 800 pounds. My Polaris weighs 500. This thing has got to be under 400. You can lift the rear with one hand. One hand! It's so small. It still has 25-inch tires on the rear. So this was the style at the time with three-wheelers. Was a pretty big rear tire on there. So even though this thing is just two-wheel drive, you get some pretty good hookup. Look at the cracks in these tires. I've never seen so much rubber. It's such a huge crack. What a big old crack he's got, that one. Better to get some for there. It has a mechanically actuated disc brake in the rear, so it's sealed in here, which is a great idea. And so it's got a foot brake and a hand brake, which we are missing. And then it's got drum brakes on the front that are cable actuated. So, you know, those have to be in pretty good shape, I think, to work. But then again, this thing is so light. Do you need it? Surprisingly, we ride a lot in the snow, and I found rear-wheel drive actually gets you pretty far. It hasn't run in a while, as these things go. But the electric start is kind of mangled. But, you know, one thing I've learned about cars is that lightness matters. And lightness really makes for fun. Like, I have a lot of fun. I know it's older and stuff, but I think this thing's going to be pretty fun. How much suspension travel does it have? Who knows? Not much. I can't see much stanchion in there. So I'm going to say not a ton. But let's get this thing pressure washed and see what's up. The original quad. Pretty cool. Also, it's got, like, copper-colored wheels, which is awesome. Reminds me of that David Freiberger Mustang with copper wheels, which I thought looked kind of silly, but I think it gives it some flair. Let's get her cleaned up. And our pressure wash is complete. It came out better. Some of the plastic is still good. I think this thing has lived outside its entire life. I think it sat outside almost 10 years before I got it. I mean, you got to consider build quality when this thing sat outside, and this was like a place that gets often 40 below Celsius. So this thing survived. Whether the engine survived or not, it turns over. That's about all we know. These beautiful headlights are completely open. There's no bulbs or wiring in them, so yeah, that's not good. It turns. The wheels hold air, which is pretty good. I noticed a few things since, again, there's very little information. It's got a low range, so we got high, low, and reverse, and that is pretty fancy for a little 250. And we got our 5-speed manual, which has some play in the shifter. That's cool. That's pretty normal on dirt bikes. You get your 5 forward gears, and your rear, it's got a centrifugal clutch. So you just add some throttle until the clutch starts to grab. And away we go. The tires are just as bad as ever. Maybe you can get some aftermarket wheels that are a little bigger, because tires are so cheap in 12-inch rims and 10-inch rims, actually. No, 12. 12's normal. God, I can't remember. But it looks pretty good. I'm psyched about this thing. I can't wait to try it out. I think it's going to be pretty fun. I think the engine is very hard to find out how much horsepower it has, but it's somewhere between 16 and about 18 when it was new. Who knows how many kilometers are on this? I'd say about 60,000 million moonshot. Shaft drive, which is cool. It's got no brakes, but the cables move, so that'll be cool. Stage next, take out carburetor, see if we can get this thing to start. And maybe some of this wiring. This is not ideal. We got some concerning looking things. This is pretty standard. You would expect this from an old quad, but a rad quad. So rad! Let's get that carb cleaned. Sit rep. Took off the fuel line, thinking I had like a tray ready. I'm like, oh, I'll catch all the old gas. Look at that. That apparently is caused by ethanol, which is just alcohol, mixing with water, and you get this goop. So you can assume most of the bottom of the tank and the entire carburetor is full of goop. So, okay. That's alright. Here's where it gets better. This brake goes completely to the thing. It's right to it. It's adjusted all the way to the top. And here on the back, we got your rear disc, which is enclosed in here. We got 2 pads on there. You got your foot brake, which has been pilfered for parts. And this thing goes all the way to the front, which means there's no pads in there. Which makes sense, because it's been pilfered. Not to mention these tires. Look at that crack. That is a Zeus crack. Let's check out the front. Check out the front brake. Wait a second. Where'd the lever go? And there's no cables. And we'll have a quick look down here at the drum brakes thing. Look, there's no cables. The entire cable system's gone. Been pilfered. Oh, man. Now, I'm going to try and get these beautiful rusted racks off to get that fuel tank out. Tanky wanky. We'll see what's in the wanky tanky. This is what I like to call escalation level Zulu. We have to get that tank out. Driven a Christmas. To take the whole thing off. Take off the bars with its crispy wiring. So the front headlight, one of them was like melted. So you can see these wires are super old and they've melted together. So there's been like a fire between them and shorted out and melted it. So those wires are, these are so bad. They're so old. This thing's 35 years old, right? Makes sense. So I found you can get the whole braking, all new cables. It's not that expensive. You want new cables anyway. It's like a slipperoo in there. You don't want no spunchy. These are probably pretty bad. That thing's adjusted to the rear and it's got nothing. So the pads are probably toast. So we got the tank off, and it just poured out yellow fuel. At least some came out. I've washed it out with a hose so far. It seems to be okay. It doesn't seem to be too much gunk in there. But we're going to put some pine sol in there. Let that clean out. Thank God for plastic tank metal. It's such a pain to fix. We got our plastics off over here. They're going to need a little painty. Or not. So we got to get some brakes. I found mouse nest in the airbox. Of course, hopefully he hit the road somewhere between the 900 kilometers it took to get here. This whole thing was covered in spiders too. I would go down, I'm like, oh, I'll just take, spider! Spider-Man! But you know, for free quad, you can't complain. Most of the parts are here. The engine did turn over. Well, we pulled the pull start and it came up. The battery has 12 volts. Amazing after 10 years. No, it has 0 volts. Of course it does. It's under the rear here. Get a little battery for it. Get a nice Chinese battery. You can't see it. Can you see it in there? Let's turn the light. Oh, yeah. 0 volts, of course. You know, I looked it up. Look at how small those shocks are. I read that they have 70 millimeters of travel. That's it. My old Articats had 10 inches front and rear. 7. That's all you need when you're the tiniest quad in the world. 400 pounds wet. That's what they claim. Full tank of fuel and oiled. 400 pounds. That's friggin' nothing. You know, one thing about drum brakes are good. You don't eat gravel and stuff. Eat it. Like Fred Flintstone. He eat gravel? Probably. Worked at a gravel quarry. It's perfect. Chip it out. Eat it up. Don't know the difference, boss. Alright, next one. We gotta take off the carb. See what's in there. It's probably a goop. Carburation Nation. Tell me your exultation. Day 2. I pulled apart the carburetor, man. It's pretty dirty in here. Took out the battery. A stunning amount of volts, 0 volts. Look at all the dirt. She's old and nasty. Why do I keep getting things that are so old and nasty? I like my wife. No, she's beautiful. So I took apart the carburetor. There was yellow fuel in here. And just a bit of goop. Super goop in there. In the inlet line. But the needle here was completely stuck. As you would imagine by the goop. So I blew everything out with carb cleaner. The jet was completely clogged. All the jets were clogged. You know, it's a little rough looking. You know, usually you clean up a carburetor and it ends up looking like pretty okay in the end. I've never had a carburetor that still looked this dirty. I have a Chinese 30 millimeter carburetor, which apparently has the same jet size, like Super Jet G4 taking off, but it didn't fit the manifold there. This thing, I'm going to buy a carb rebuild kit for it with new needles and seats. Apparently stuff wears out, and they sell Chinese rebuild kits now. They're pretty good. I don't know if it's up to Mikuni quality. I think it's a 34 millimeter. Hard to say. But I cleaned all the jets and put it back together best I could so that the needle and seat work now. So gas can pour in there. Gasolina. Gasolina. V8. You put the two fingers together, right? The V8. The Mad Max. There's an alarming amount of goop on the bottom here, which looks like a giant oil leak coming from the transmission. So we'll have to address that. Also, I was under the impression that this thing turned over and we pulled the pull start. It does nothing. There's no engagement. That doesn't work. Some of these pull start's screwed, or whatevs, or I'm doing this wrong. There is an electric start though, so I got a kind of working battery and some jumper packs. So I think we'll try and get that gas tank together, put this carb on, and get a battery and see if the electric start works with our frazzled, bedazzled starting array here. I don't know if any of those work. Maybe we'll just jump the starter. Let's give it a try. Oh man, this thing looks like it's been underwater for a while. That was a hard looking carb. She lived a hard life. Alright, so we got some super jumper action to another dead battery. I got the carb back on. I filled the bowl with some gas. I squirted a little bit of gas down the throat. We got our run switch on. The pull start doesn't work. Let's see what we got. Woo! So it runs. This is good. I don't know how good that carburetor is, but I got the gas tank cleaned out with some pine sol, and I put a big old door chain in there and knocked it around. Seemed to a worky dirky, but it runs. This is so good. This means things can get figured out. Once I get a fuel tank on there, maybe the carburetor will work. I don't know, maybe not. I've got to get a rebuild kit. Anyways, pretty cool. I mean, all I seem to work on is junk. Maybe sometime I'll get something that's good and newer and doesn't require everything. I'm going to pop off the hubs now and see how the brake shoes are and if there's any hardware left in there and see how bad the disc is so I can start ordering all the parts. But hey, it runs. Happy day. Hope you found this interesting. I'll do some more videos once I get this thing, you know, driving. It looks pretty rough. It really needs to get cleaned. Oh man. But hey, it runs, and that's half the battle. Well, most of the battle. A lot of the battle. Wait, there's a lot of battle left. It's the battle. Freedom! See you in the next one.